Yeah, so I'm making this video to explain what every player can expect when they bring a saxophone into agave music. Call it the agave music cycle of repair. After I explain, I'm going to answer some questions that I think a lot of players are thinking. Please ask any additional questions below and I will respond to those as well. In the background is a video of a clean oil adjust on a Selmer Series 2 tenor saxophone. The beginning of the agave music cycle of repair starts with either a brand new sax getting a full setup.
All new saxophones need to be set up, a newer sax with a fresh clean oil adjust or a full mechanical overhaul done in shop.
This ensures your sax is clean, airtight, and set up right. Once the sax is brought up to agave music standards, I recommend having minor adjustments once a year, a clean oil adjust every 3 to 6 years depending on how much the sax is played. With regular adjustments and COAs, the overhaul should last between 10 years and 40 years depending on how much it is played, how well it's cared for, and the climate it's played in. After each of these repairs, the whole sax is checked with the magnehelic to ensure it is truly airtight. The magnehelic is an extremely valuable tool. There really is no other way to make sure your whole sax is tight. Consistency is key to having efficient, productive practices, rehearsals, and performances. Musicians have enough to concentrate on as it is. When you aren't dealing with a leaky sax, you can concentrate on other things such as intonation, timing, blending, expressiveness, and so on. One of the things I say is repair technicians don't work on horns, we repair horns. That means every horn we touch, we're responsible for making sure the entire horn's in proper working order. This takes years of play testing and used with a feeler gauge and with a leak light. Because a lot of saxophones play, they don't play to their full potential. And any student that plays on a horn that doesn't play right is far more likely to quit. Oftentimes thinking for the rest of their life that they're no good at music. So if there's something wrong with your horn or if your horn hasn't been looked at a tech regularly, check the whole horn over and make sure everything works right. That way your time practicing and your time playing is spent on a horn that works right. You'll mature a lot faster as a player and it'll build confidence in the player, knowing that it's not as hard as he thinks. A lot of the small leaks will just make it play better in tune and easier to sound good. Just like playing saxophones, it takes 10,000 hours plus to really be a professional. The same way a professional band isn't going to hire a saxophone player from high school just because it's cheap. They're going to get the guy who can perform the job well. You're going to be way better off with a technician who does it 10, 12 hours a day for 20 years than somebody who has very little hours put into it. Then we can do the numbers on that.
Yeah, I think it was like 49,000 hours.
Yeah, okay.
49,000 hours.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let me refer you to my videographer and answer that question. When I was young in high school, I kind of knew already I didn't have the talent as a musician to be a working musician. There's very few of those, and in addition to talent, it's a lot of work. So To consider being a musician for a living, you need to be naturally very talented and you need to be very passionate. Separately, as a repair technician, I was the guy that would take my own horn, my guitar apart and stuff like that. I used to design my own headstocks and pieces of paper, and it was just kind of working on instruments was a passion of mine that I'm not totally sure where it came from. I played bari sax in high school, and like most bari sax players in high school, I used the school bari. It went to the repair shop every summer, oftentimes 2 or 3 times during the school year, and it never was even close to being repaired right. So I was always struggling with a horn, and it bothered me that someone who did this for a living, that was a quote-unquote adult to a little kid, was taking the school's money, but it really wasn't fixing the horn, and that was my perception at the time. Now I know how very difficult bari saxophones are to repair, and that there's really only maybe 1 or 2 guys in each state that could do a proper repair on a bari. Now I'm one of those guys that fixes it correctly, but that's kind of what drove me to get into repair.
I think it's better if I go to a cheaper tech, or should I try doing it on my own?
No, my recommendation is if you don't have money, then you bring your horn in and tell me how much money you do have to spend. Somebody with 25 years experience repairing horns is gonna know where the leaks are that are most important, where the adjustments are that are most important, and I can target the things that make your horn play the best for the amount of money you have. In addition to doing a lot of pro work, I spent many years working on rental instruments and school horns. And in those cases, you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of money. So I had to be very good at finding exactly what things to fix on the horn that make it play and make it last.
As a beginner, is my horn even qualified for an overhaul, or?
And airtight sax helps everybody. I would say it probably helps a beginner more than it does a professional, because you're trying to learn so much and instill the good habits that a leaky sax will cause you to have bad habits. If it's a new beginner sax, it does need a setup, but obviously it doesn't need an overhaul. But the cycle's pretty much the same. It should still come in once a year, and we should still take it apart and give it a good cleaning every few years.
Do I really need an overhaul if I've never done one before and my sax sounds okay still?
Saxophone's a powerful instrument because you have a big mouthpiece with a reed, but typically players don't understand how well their saxophone is sealing or not sealing until after it's repaired better, and then they understand what they were missing later. Kind of like finding a better mouthpiece or a better ligature or anything else. When you're playing on a leaky sax, it doesn't make it unplayable. It just makes you have to overcompensate while you're playing.
How does an overhaul change my performance or my practicing?
The biggest thing with practicing is that it's consistent. Every time you practice, there's thousands of muscles that are doing things that your brain remembers that you're not necessarily conscious of. If your saxophone is leaking, then it's inconsistent, and therefore you're practicing different things every time you go to practice. If your horn is airtight and set up right every single time you play and it's clean, then every time you go to practice, everything's consistent and that muscle memory becomes really efficient.
Big thanks to Jerusa Funk for the background music. They're one of my favorite bands. I encourage you all to check them out as well.